doesn't have to end that way. I must also point out that the instances of fatal encounters are a tiny fraction of police encounters with the citizens of the United States. And that the mean streets can be a very dangerous place, and cops have my full backing for the great job the vast majority of them do keeping our streets and communities safe. As for the bad cops, it's on you, police departments across America. Find them and get rid of them. That's not racist, that's not pandering, that's just common sense. That said, last week I talked about the Seattle Autonomous Zone known as CHOP, the 6 square blocks of Seattle that was overrun by groups who seemed to just dislike America. There was a wall. How about that? They built a wall, and no, Mexico didn't pay for it, Seattle did. There were Antifa flags flying on the wall, and there were socialist groups passing out flyers inside the zone. And of course, there were Black Lives Matter protesters among the discontents. This was, after all, a protest started in the aftermath of George Floyd's senseless murder at the hands of cops in Minneapolis. The general sense from the outside was that people occupying CHOP were generally anti-American. They certainly weren't acting like any American city I've ever known. Last week, I took issue with Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan's description of the Autonomous Zone as having a block party atmosphere. I also noted on several occasions that I didn't think CHOP was going to end well. Unfortunately, I was right. Within a day or so of airing that monologue, late one night, a fight broke out in the park inside CHOP that was used for various activities. A heated argument led to guns being drawn. Within minutes, one man was shot dead and another lay dying. Seattle police mobilized. Now watch this body cam footage of the SPD literally just minutes after the shots rang out, rushing to the scene. Now watch there as they are also met by a large group of CHOP inhabitants blocking their entry into the zone.
What's going on? Put your guns down!
That's no block party, Mayor Durkan. That right there is blood on your hands. During the monologue, I mentioned a man who is known as the head of the security for CHOP, Raz Simone, an aspiring hip-hop star, had become the boss of security. It wasn't just me being concerned. Seattle Police Chief Carmen Best was worried too.
We've also received report that these armed people may be demanding payment from business owners in exchange for some of that protection. We've also heard that they may be demanding to see identification from people who live in the area. This is not legal.
So last week I asked, why does a peaceful protest group need an armed security patrol? And secondly, why would these people stop Seattle police from coming into the zone to assist when shots were ringing out? As it turns out, I can ask those questions directly to Raz Simone, who joins me now. Thank you for joining us, Raz, in the exclusive. Good to have you. So, I read a lot about you. I've been hearing things that there's some sort of warlord moniker attached to you, but I also heard that you don't want to be called a warlord. What exactly are you to CHOP?
I'm not a self-proclaimed leader of CHOP. Definitely not a warlord. Definitely not a terrorist. I was just someone that was standing up for what was right, and then I also was there to try to protect people as other people were trying to harm them. So my stance, I can't say that I stand for all the things that everyone stands for out there, because there are a lot of people out there. And right now I've taken a huge step back and just trying to let people do their thing. It's kind of shifted and morphed into its own thing.
You know, Raz, I respect that. I got that. Part of my problem, though, is I'm looking at CHOP, which was originally Chaz, the Autonomous Zone. I'm seeing a lot of property defaced. You know, I'm all for First Amendment rights. I'm all for peaceful protests, but emphasis on peaceful. I don't think any of these have been technically peaceful, especially CHOP, Raz. I mean, there was someone who was shot dead in the middle of CHOP. How was that a peaceful protest?
Well, so all the protesters are peaceful. The protesters have been the ones that keep on getting shot. And that was the reason why we worked with the city to put up barricades. So that's the story that people don't know. People think that CHOP just put up their own barricades. No, it was SDOT that did that to try to protect people, because there were people there are numerous times that people have tried to do vehicular homicide and tried to just plow through people with their cars. And then one of those times, the guy plowed through people, and he jumped out and he shot one of the protesters. And now there's been about 4 protesters that have been shot by random vehicles pulling up and just shooting at peaceful protesters. I personally don't, I'd rather people spray paint on the pieces of wood that aren't going to be there. I don't really want spray paint on buildings and things like that. And I think that that's calmed down a bunch. But I'm not here to mess up any kind of property. I've literally actually been protecting the property because I understand that when you protect the property, it protects the people and protects the movement, because it gives us a bad name when people are doing things.
So Raz, and you and I, the reason why you're on the show right now is you tweeted that you were upset, and I think we have the tweet that you were ticked off that first responders weren't coming into CHOP that night, that deadly night, the deadly shooting in the middle of CHOP where someone was dead and another person was severely wounded. You were mad that those first responders weren't going into the zone and helping. Now, everyone knows, surely you know, that first responders don't go into dangerous situations. There is other video that the Seattle Police Department showed us of them trying to get into CHOP. It's minutes after the shots rang out. They're trying to get in, and there were people within CHOP that stopped the police. There was a good 10 police that wanted to get in there, and they were surrounded and they were stopped. So first responders can't go in if the police haven't secured the location yet. So how is that their fault? I mean, what is the complaint here? So
my issue is not with first responders. I love first responders. I love the fire department. And that tweet was not saying F first responders. I was saying F politics. And the system that we have going on right now. The issue is that the first responders couldn't go in because the police are doing what they're doing. And the police are doing what they're doing because politics. And that's my issue. The accountability is like, you can't say, okay, I'm mad at the firefighters or I'm mad at the EMTs, because then it's like, no, you have to go up higher to them. Okay, you can't say you're mad at the police because they're getting their orders from these people. Oh, you got to go higher. You rolled a video of a first responder in his car basically saying F politics or F police, and because these guys aren't coming in. No, I've never said F police.
Okay, all right, fair enough. F politics, because they wouldn't go in and help, but it had nothing to do with politics. Any city in the United States, a first responder is not going to go into a zone where they can be bodily harmed themselves.
It does have to do with politics, because you see how the police are not entering in. The police were never kicked out. Police didn't get kicked out.
I'm rolling video. I'm rolling video as we speak of the Seattle Police Department body cams of a good 10 of them trying to get into CHOP, and this is literally within, I believe, 10 minutes of the shooting. We're rolling it right now, and they're confronted by a group of people in CHOP saying, no, you can't come in. So they couldn't get in to secure the location so first responders could come in and, as you point out, help one of your brothers, one of your people that were laying injured and dying.
First off, we don't know any of those people in that video, so I don't really even think that those are real people. Secondly, when does that ever stop a police officer when people say, hey, please leave?
Now, Raz, now, and you're hitting it. You're hitting this problem right now. Police don't know what to do anymore. If they do, if they use force to go in, if they push people out of the way or use pepper spray to get in to help a dying man or people, they're going to be called racist now in various jurisdictions in the country.
I can see that perspective, and I think that it is very confusing for police officers, and it sucks. It's a hard position that police officers are in, and that's why my issue is not with police officers. I know lots of good police officers. My uncle was the chief of police, the first black chief of police in Tacoma. I never have thrown police officers down the drain. I don't do that. I don't say F police. What I'm saying is it's the system. They are told that they cannot move, they cannot go in, they cannot do anything. Even the chief of police was upset that she wasn't able to go in. She said that on record. So what I'm saying is it goes higher, and that's why I said F politics.
Yeah.
There's all these
higher to where, Raz? Let's say, you're making a ton of sense right now. Higher to where? Where's the disconnect? So if boots on the ground police officers aren't your problem, clearly the mayor, I don't think, is your problem, because mayor was allowing you guys to do what you're going to do. Where is that line? What are we not catching here?
It keeps going up. I'm not sure if it's the mayor, the governor, pass that out. I don't know, but it's the election year and everyone has an agenda and they're pushing that, and I am naive. I don't know all of that because I don't really focus in on politics. I'm not one party or the other.
No. Not yet.
So,
not yet. I have a hunch there's going to be a politics future for Raz Simone. Raz, tell me this. And we've been doing this for the better part of a month now. Have had black scholars come on, professors come on, athletes come on. Everyone has a different idea. Please tell me what defund the police means to you.
I never say that either. But when I hear people say it, it actually sounds a lot better than it sounds when you hear defund the police. What they're talking about is pretty much shifting funding around and taking away certain things, making it be more about, better training, better this, better that. When I've heard people explain it to me, it actually sounded pretty lovely. But when you hear the word defund the police, at first it sounds like, wait a second, if they're doing a bad job, don't they need more? If you feel like they're doing a bang up job, doesn't it need this or that? Wouldn't that just make it even worse? But when I hear people say it, it's not that. It's not just take the funds away from them. For me personally, I just feel like we can look at the statistics. We know that there's almost 500 white men that die every year by the hands of police. There's like 400 and some black men that die by the hands of police. There's like 12% black people in America, and like somewhere between 50 to 70 something, white people. So when people are saying, Black Lives Matter, they're saying it because it's a disproportionate rate of black, men that are dying by the hands of police. But to me, it's like people are dying by the hands of police. That is an issue. And most of the police are not hateful creatures. A lot of them are just nervous, or they don't have the strength to do damage.
I don't have a lot of time, and I'd like to pick this up again with you. But I'm watching a couple of things, and just let's wrap this up here. This week, I'm watching two African American young guys in their probably late teens, early 20s. One of them's holding a long gun, and he's on the news saying, if cops come here, they're not allowed here. And this is in D.C. I'm seeing things like that. I'm seeing people, white people, pointing their fingers at black cops, pointing them, making gun signs that they're black cops. And the cops have to sit there and just hold it back and just being completely disrespected. Is this part, do you condone that, or do you say that has got to stop too?
That's not part of CHOP. That's not part of, so anytime that a gun has been out in CHOP, has not been for police. And that's why I say you would have to be so naive, or think that I'm naive and stupid to think that I have a gun that I'm going to battle police with, that I'm so big bad Raz, warlord, that I'm like, yeah, I got this one gun in my hands and I'm about to keep out all the thousands of cops that are here in this city and the National Guard. No, it's not for that. It's always been for protecting the people, because the people keep on getting shot by outsiders and ran over by outsiders. So it was more of a, hey, we've got this. So if someone comes in to intimidate, they can walk up to me and we can have a respectful conversation. I don't think that I'm going to have to shoot some white supremacist guy. And I have had conversations with people, and it was super peaceful. We've had conversations about Trump and Biden and all these things, and our Second Amendment rights and all these things. And we start realizing, wait a second, we actually have more in common than not in common.
I got to go, Raz. I got to get Raz back on, because I want to have that conversation. I want to have that conversation with you about Trump and Biden, because there are a lot of things that people, Trump doesn't get a lot of support from the black community, and Joe Biden has a lot of history that the black community, if they're being honest, will say has done nothing for the black community. In fact, been bad for the black community. Raz, I would love to get you back on. We'll look at booking you again next week. Again, Raz Simone, everybody, thank you for your time.
Have a great night.
Now I want to bring in Dr. Wilfred Reilly, an associate professor of political science at Kentucky State University. Dr. Reilly, thanks for joining me. I just talked to Raz Simone from CHOP, and he enlightened me on some of the things. I asked him, defund police, what does that mean to him? And he said he didn't believe in that. Is there a sense, is this moving target of what it means to defund the police, is it moving, and are people realizing that you can't fully defund the police? Tell us what you think.
Well, I think that moving the goalpost is a major problem in American politics. I find this to be true, especially on the political left. I will say that this movement did begin with the open argument that we should defund the police. There was a New York Times lead editorial that was headlined, yes, man, we mean abolish the police. So, that's the perspective from which I took at least the initial arguments. And I think we've seen the fruit of that with some police pullbacks in New York and Chicago over the past week or two, to be frank.
Yeah, and that is a concern. I'm going to talk about Chicago, but this week we saw in D.C. A couple armed. One guy was armed, another guy was standing with them. Two African-American guys and a white guy saying if the cops come here, they're not welcome here, and they're holding a long gun in hand. It seems vastly different each situation. Like, Raz Simone basically said, no, we weren't being violent. We believe in police. He believes in police. Is this part of the problem that there's not one unified message?
Well, to be frank, I mean, Raz Simone seems like an interesting guy. I've listened to some of his hip hop. It's not bad. But I mean, there have been 3 shootings in Chaz, quote unquote, his independent microstate over the past couple of days. And while I think a lot of us have had fun with Chaz or with Chop making jokes, Fox News ran a tourism clip for the world's newest country. The simple fact is, if you don't have cops, what you do have is tough young men from the area standing around with guns. I don't think whatever you call it, that's a good idea. I can't help but notice there's something like 600 normal middle-class American homes located within the boundaries of the Chaz, and I pretty strongly would bet that those people wish there was a police presence around right now.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the 100 people shot, and 107 people shot in Chicago on Father's Day weekend. Is it fixable, and how?
Well, sure, it's fixable. Use police. One of the things that's very rarely said is that working class neighborhoods, and this is true across all races, are not over policed, but rather are under policed. What I mean by that is that you might have more police in those areas, perhaps twice as many from some breakdowns I've seen of CompStat policing. But if you have 6 times as much crime there as versus, say, a leafy suburb, you end up with a worst of both worlds scenario where there are a lot of negative interactions with the police, and people, especially young men, know that, but crime's still through the roof. And the way to deal with that, as odd as this may initially sound, is to train police to interact well with the citizenry and send in even more in a lot of cases. And over, we saw this past week in Chicago. There were 100 people shot, horribly ironically, on Father's Day. We saw this in New York, I believe literally the day after they pulled back one of their plainclothes units, elite plainclothes unit. There were 18 shootings. What we very consistently see is that as police withdraw to try to appease what very often seem like legitimate activist movements, you see more crime. This became famously known throughout 2014 as the Ferguson effect. Mm-hmm. Between 2014 and 2017, we saw an increase of about 3,000 in murders concentrated among poor people, unfortunately among black people.
Yeah, now we're going to have to leave it there, but you touch on a good point, the Ferguson effect. I remember the Ferguson. There was the L.A. effect as well. 2020, I can't imagine what the legacy of 2020 is going to be, and we're only halfway through it. I say thank you, Dr. Wilfred Reilly. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on.
It's been an interesting week for the Trump administration between the president's first MAGA rally since the pandemic and the former National Security Advisor John Bolton's book being released. Joining me now is counselor to the president and my very good friend, Kellyanne Conway. Thank you for joining us. Kellyanne, before we get to that book, I really want to focus in on what is being called the Black House Autonomous Zone. We saw what went on in Seattle with the CHOP or the Chaz, whatever they called it. We're seeing them kind of tested in different parts of the country. What's going to happen in D.C. with the Black House Autonomous Zone, the Autonomous Zone, Black Lives Matter, et cetera, Antifa, looking to set up shop in D.C.?
Well, the president has said that he's not going to allow that to happen. And why he says that is because of what he sees going on in Seattle. You made that point. The mayor of Seattle has been played for a fool. She basically said, we're just having a garden party, little beer garden, backyard barbecue. She didn't stand up then, and now at least one person has lost their lives through a shooting there. And she basically had to call back in law enforcement to help, and it looks like that's being dismantled there. Look, we want people to peacefully protest. That is protected under the First Amendment. It's one of the many things that makes our democracy and our differences of opinion so vibrant, robust, and flourishing in this nation. But there's a huge difference between that and what we're seeing in some of these areas now. The vandalism, the violence, and let me just say, people like Nancy Pelosi on Capitol Hill, polishing her apples, being so proud of herself. Look at me, I'm taking down statues, I'm demanding portraits be removed. She's walked by those portraits and statues for years, thousands of times over decades in Washington, D.C., every time going to the House floor to vote against school choice programs, to vote against defunding Planned Parenthood, which puts itself right in our inner cities, so that they can do their bloodletting there.
Yep.
And so she's a hypocrite, and it's just easy and convenient for people like that. We have to focus on the president's record helping communities of color and those who just want to set up autonomous zones, take down statues. That doesn't help anybody.
I find it amazing that Twitter, President tweeted that they would be met with serious force, and Twitter flagged that tweet. They called it abusive behavior. I'm not sure if Jack knows what's going on Twitter, but you want to talk about abusive behavior. Those certainly aren't words that are abusive compared to some of the things that Kellyanne, you and I both have experienced personally. Let's talk about John Bolton's book for a minute. I've known Bolton a long time. He was never pro-Trump. I'll tell you this from the very beginning. When he was brought on as national security advisor, I was a little shocked because he didn't seem the right fit for the Trump agenda. Now he's out with a book that's taking shots, pot shots, cheap shots at the president. What are your thoughts? What's the president thinking?
Well, the president's made very clear what he thinks. He's tweeted about this and talked about it extensively. I'll say a few things. And I worked with John Bolton every day of the every day of the 17 months he was here. These tell-all books should tell us all what you've done while you've been here. And ironically, that most of the national security accomplishments, and there have been many, of the Trump-Pence administration occurred either before John got here or after he left. So moving the embassy to Jerusalem, pressuring NATO members to pay their fair share of the dues, of the defense dues. And also, I think after he left, it was Soleimani and al-Baghdadi and sanctioning the ICC and the Afghan peace deal where we're drawing down troops and so many different things that have happened that he wasn't a part of. So tell us what your record was. Also, I thought his criticism of the president's handling the pandemic was really rich because Bolton immediately got rid of one of my favorite colleagues here at the White House, Tom Bossert, who was an assistant to the president and here for counterterrorism and homeland security, who knew a lot about pandemics and other things, that hurricanes and fires and mass shootings. He was always on top of it when he was here as a colleague, and Bolton didn't want that position to be at his level, assistant to the president, which was silly and petty. Yeah. I think a lot of this is inside Washington. People who don't like the president will use the book to further their thoughts, and others will criticize. But I also think we have so much more to focus on. Frankly, I think the president and all of us should be busy positioning him as the healthcare president he's been, so that women who are the chief healthcare officers of their households realize what he's done on ventilators, vaccines, therapeutics. He got a huge win this week by a court on his transparency, which means that you know what the prices are before you, the patient, go and contract for a medical procedure, the way you do for almost any other transaction in your life. The president has transformed the way we pay for insulin, kidney health. He's done so much on healthcare. He's stabilized Obamacare, which is a terrible thing with millions of people with no health care, the big lie, keep your plan, keep your doctor. I think our time is much better spent doing that and helping to get rid of this COVID-19 once and forever through therapeutics and vaccine than worrying about some book. All
right, we're going to leave it right there. Kellyanne Conway, we appreciate your time. And again, as always, I hope he's doing well. We care about the president's health.
Always a pleasure, Eric. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Ahead in America this week, former federal prosecutor, New York City mayor, and current personal attorney of President Trump, Rudy Giuliani. You don't want to miss his take on the latest in the Michael Flynn case and John Bolton's book.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers facts, not falsehoods.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I appreciate the opportunity to clear some of it up.
Hard-edged opinions.
We can no longer rely on China to be the primary producer of so many critical products that we need in a time of crisis.
Tough topic debates.
Has the mainstream media vetted Joe Biden the way they vetted others on the right?
I just believe that all women have the right to speak their truth and that those truths should also be investigated. The end, regardless of what political party they are a part of.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Fighting COVID-19.
We're working with every single state to be able to detect outbreaks before they spread into the community.
And the path forward.
Getting back to some degree of normality, that will come. We will get over this.
America This Week investigates chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
The poisoning of America.
It's in the soils, it's in the water, and it's in our blood.
Toxic chemicals linked to multiple cancers found in towns across America.
We were poisoned, and we are still poisoned.
Almost every day, there is a new community that is finding out that their water is contaminated.
America This Week relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week. The case against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn is one step closer to being over. A federal appeals court ordered the case to be dismissed. Joining now, the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. Thank you for being here, good friend of mine as well. Let's have a little fun today, Mr. Mayor. Let's do a little rapid fire. I'll throw them at you. We'll do about a minute on each. First topic off the top. General Flynn getting exonerated. Thoughts?
Justice, finally. And now opportunity to bring the people who did it to justice. This was probably, the crimes were committed by Comey and the people who did this, Peter Strzok. They violated not only rules of ethics, but I really think they obstructed justice. So I'd really like to see a Justice Department investigation of them and turn the tables and see if we can get some justice for the other side.
Okay, all right. Very quickly, I would stay on this for just a little bit longer. Comey, do you actually think he'll see time behind bars?
He should. I mean, Comey committed blatant perjury in the Pfizer application. That's about as clear. I mean, he committed other crimes too, but that's about as clear as it gets. I mean, he signed it claiming that it was verified, and then consistently during that period of time, even 4 months later, told the president it was unverified. Yeah. So he contradicted himself. Yeah. There'll be witnesses and his own testimony that contradicts what he said under oath. And then, I mean, there are a whole group of other lies that he participated in. But that one is about as clear as you can get.
All right, topic two, let's talk about Jeffrey Berman, the fired SDNY prosecutor. Tell us what went, you know, he was looking into you at one point, if I'm not mistaken. Tell me about Berman.
Yeah, well, that was just pure, I mean, that's pure harassment. I didn't do anything wrong. They never subpoenaed anything. They never looked at anything. They never asked me a question. And I offered at any moment to come down there and show them why it was a bunch of bull. Just part of the, you know, go after every Trump person you can, which they literally did with that whole Cohen thing. Remember, all during that Cohen thing, the theory was they were going to indict Trump. And of course, they leaked like crazy. They really hurt the president in terms of reputation. And then, of course, there was no case. So, I mean, this is not a sterling record by Berman. But now it turns out that Berman had the whole Biden thing long before I got it and didn't do anything with it. A lawyer, former U.S. attorney, Republican, came to him with loads of evidence of Biden taking bribes, Democrats interfering in the election, and Berman didn't do a damn thing with it. What Berman did instead is have that whole trumped up, excuse the expression, the whole framed up investigation of Trump that he leaked to the press. Yes, I mean, he made a choice. Here he had clear evidence, witnesses willing to testify that Biden took bribes. They're willing to come to America and testify. Yeah. And then he had that phony Stormy Daniels garbage with Avenatti, and he went with that instead. Yeah. He leaked to the press like crazy.
As they say, he picked the wrong horse. He chose the wrong horse.
No, also, he went with the media, you know, the media choice. That is slam Trump and cover up Biden.
Well, that was the Southern District, New York. That's the way they kind of roll.
Yeah, it's a shame. I ran the Southern District of New York.
I remember.
And unfortunately, they're not immune to Trump derangement syndrome. Yeah. I know them. I know where they come from. And these are some of the most irrational Trump haters.
Yeah, the Vance family. Sir, let's talk about John Bolton. He's been in the news. He's all over promoting his book that Trump didn't want released and published. What are your thoughts? What do you know about Bolton?
Well, I know John for a long, long time. I'm really, really disappointed in him. I think he's a skunk. I mean, he claims that he had all kinds of concerns about what I did. He never once came to me and said it to me. I mean, you and I know each other, and if you thought I was doing something wrong, you'd come to me and tell me, or vice versa. Instead, he passed me in the halls, and we talked, and the first time I found out about it is when he decided to leak it to the press. So I don't consider that a friend. I consider that a backstabber. If he had come to me and told me I have concerns with what you're doing in Ukraine, I could have explained it to him because he's wrong about what I was doing there. But he never gave me that opportunity, so I consider the guy a backstabber. And he's lying about things that I know about, so I have to assume he's pretty much lying throughout or exaggerating. You know how it goes with a book. The publisher says, oh, if you stretch it here, you stretch it there, we can sell more books. Well, I think he stretched it way out because it's all about selling books. If this was important, he would have testified before Congress under oath.
Yeah.
Instead, he shut up
somehow,
and he got his $2 million.
Somehow he's
like
got,
Judas, except it was...
He somehow got both the right, not loving his what he's doing with Trump, and he's got the left against him for not testifying in front of a panel, the House panel or Senate panel, because
not a good guy, Eric.
Not a good guy. Well, listen, I've known him a long time. Mr. Mayor, I'd have to agree with you on your assessment. I got to leave it there, sir. I ran out of time. I want to ask you about autonomous zones, because here's the guy who broke down the biggest autonomous zone of all time, Times Square in New York City. You took that thing apart, dismantled it, and made that a shining city on the hill. Mayor Rudy Giuliani, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you.
This week, a federal appeals court ordered the case against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn to be thrown out. Here to discuss it and all political topics, political commentator Amisha Cross, former deputy assistant to President Trump, host of America First on Salem Radio, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Seb, let's talk about it very quickly. This is clearly a win for General Flynn, but also a win for the Trump administration. Explain.
Yes, this is an amazing news, Eric. Full disclosure, Mike is a former colleague of mine, but also a friend. This is a man who was targeted, we now know, by the Obama administration and then by Obama holdovers. He's been in this dancing inferno for 3 years now, has had to pay more than $3 million worth of legal fees. He committed no crime. He was targeted by an FBI that was out of control. And now finally he will see justice. So this is the proof that there was a concerted attempt to undermine not only the Trump campaign, but also the Trump administration. But finally, Mike Flynn will have his victory lap against the deep state.
And what are your thoughts, Amisha?
This is just further evidence that Trump and the Trump administration has a really hard problem with separation of powers. Winner takes the spoils. President Trump packed the federal courts once he became president. And what we see in this case is a federal judge, a Trump appointee specifically, who wrote the opinion. So this is more of the same with Donald Trump calling on his friends to get off his criminal friends.
And said the opinion was very harsh against the people who were trying to continue the General Flynn case, wasn't it?
It was deemed to be an egregious abuse of power. When we found out, thanks to the DOJ documents and FBI documents that have been released, that 16 days before the inauguration, the FBI was closing down the case against General Flynn. There was no collusion. This is January 2017. And then Peter Strzok texts the agent who's shutting down the case and says, no, hold it open. And Comey sends 2 agents to the White House without going through White House counsel to interview Mike Flynn, without telling him he's a suspect, telling him he doesn't need counsel, and to entrap him based upon a phone call that they had the full transcript of. That's police state tactics. It's okay in Venezuela, but not in America.
Yeah. You know, I want to move over to another topic, Amisha, if you don't mind. What is considered not necessarily a win for the Trump administration. John Bolton, former National Security Advisor, wrote a book. It got released. Trump tried to stop the book from being released, but he's taking cheap shots, taking pot shots at the president. What are your thoughts on the Bolton book and John Bolton himself?
John Bolton, God bless him. John Bolton should have testified. There's a lot, that is coming out of this book that showcases a lot of what we already knew about President Trump, that he didn't really have a legitimate foreign policy strategy, that every move that he's made as president has been towards his reelection campaign, that he is someone who doesn't understand the long-range commitments that America has with a lot of the international community. He is someone who is an isolationist when it comes to conversations, treaties, being someone who understands the impact of these international negotiations. And I think that what Bolton also highlights is the fact that President Trump gets played a lot, specifically in these meetings with dictators, where he goes in assuming he's going to walk out with a deal and comes out with exactly the opposite, a lot of nothing.
All right, Sebastian, listen, you and I know John Bolton for a very long time. I've said it on this show. I could not ever understand why the president would bring on John Bolton. The guy had completely different ideas on foreign policy and in so many ways. Why would John Bolton ever be allowed inside the confines of the White House?
Look, I'm not going to talk to the decision of why John Bolton was chosen, but I am very amused that Amisha says, God bless John Bolton. It's Amisha and her comrades across the left who have attacked this man for 30 years, calling him a warmonger and some kind of neocon hawk. Suddenly he's a darling of the Democrats. This is hilarious. Look, there's a rule in D.C. You don't write kiss and tell books about the president who appointed you, and you wait until the president has left office. John has besmirched his reputation. It's an embarrassment. And we have already had the South Korean National Security Advisor had said these things that John Bolton is reporting to have occurred in conversations never happened. Right. John Bolton's an embarrassment.
Let me give Amisha about a half a minute or so final comment.
The funny thing here is President Trump has not followed a single rule since being in office. So for Sebastian Gorka to now throw shade on John Bolton for not following this unspoken rule of actually writing a book before the president is gone, it's humorous to me at best.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Amisha Cross and Sebastian Gorka, thank you both so much. Coming up next, White House trade advisor Peter Navarro returns. You won't believe the tough words he had for John Bolton. I want to take a minute to update you on a project that's near and dear to me. As you may recall, I'm the chairman of a new company whose mission is to find alternatives to opioids for pain. Jan 1 is the company, and we're making strides in the fight to save lives. Currently, we have a drug in clinical development which treats pain at the source and is non-opioid. I can only hope to be on the team that develops an alternative to drugs like OxyContin and fentanyl. Those drugs are at the center of hundreds of thousands of overdose deaths in America alone. I personally have met with HHS Deputy Secretary Admiral Brett Giroir, and also former FDA Administrator Dr. Scott Gottlieb, about bringing this alternative drug to the market safely and without addictive properties. Now, full disclosure, Jan 1 is a NASDAQ-traded company under the symbol JAN, and the only financial consideration I have in the company at all is through the foundation in my son's name, the Eric Chase Foundation.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, American strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all.
A surprising decision by a federal appeals court this week, ordering a judge to immediately dismiss the criminal case against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. This comes as another former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, is making waves this week with his new book. Joining us now is White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro. Peter, thanks for being here again. Let's start on the news of the week. General Flynn, very quickly, what are your thoughts? He's been exonerated. He gets to move on. It's a win for the administration as well.
He was always exonerated in my book. He was framed by rogue FBI agents who should be in jail for what they did to that man. They destroyed his life. The only reason why they ever got him to settle on anything is because they threatened his son, and he did what he did as a good man and a good father. But he was framed, and what needs to be held accountable is the Page and Strzok of this world, and the Brennan and Clapper. These people should be in orange jumpsuits along with John Bolton.
There we go. You led me into the next phase. By the way, I agree with you 100%. Let's not forget that man, General Flynn, was a general. General Flynn, thank him for his service. Peter, let's talk about Bolton for a minute.
He is a good man.
Yeah, I know Bolton a long time.
Yeah.
I could never figure out why Bolton was even part of the Trump administration. Bolton hated everything that Trump was about, pulling people, getting us out of foreign wars and foreign conflicts. Bolton never saw a war or conflict he wasn't interested in getting involved in from afar. Tell us about what you know about Bolton, John Bolton.
Well, right behind me, literally, is John's office when he was here. And what he did from the get-go is basically come in here and set up an autonomous zone within the West Wing, with him literally as the warlord. He pressed kinetic warfare, which is to say things like missiles in every place like North Korea, Iran. He wanted more troops in Afghanistan, Syria, run it on down. And here's the thing, Eric, if you simply read his book, it's the best exoneration of President Donald J. Trump's foreign policy, because everything Bolton wanted to do would have made this country less peaceful and less prosperous. And Bolton himself, I mean, it's really a tragedy what he's done. If you look at the court case where they allowed the sale of the book, that was, I think, a judgment that also said quite clearly that John Bolton will never see a dime from this book. And he leaked not just classified information, Eric, highly classified information, and he should turn in that seersucker suit for an orange jumpsuit if the DOJ and the grand jury has anything to say about it.
You know, what do you think about
Serious
him?
Matter. He let this country down.
Typically, you work in an administration, especially at the high level that Bolton worked, and you want to write a book. First of all, it gets cleared in many different ways, gets vetted, but you wait until the seated president you worked for is out of office. What do you think about Bolton writing the book, delivering it, basically walking into a re-election campaign?
Yeah. One of the things that surprised me about him, because he had this reputation as a smooth operator in the Bush days, was how poor a manager he was. Robert O'Brien, the current NSA, gets something more done in a week than Bolton ever did. And I think part of the reason is that Bolton liked to be hanging out in his luxury home in Bethesda, working on that book in business hours. I find that really offensive. I'm here 7 days a week, put in 10 to 12-hour days, just like many people at this White House. And basically, book deal Bolton, big lie Bolton, was basically out in Bethesda, not doing the people's business, but rather positioning himself for a big payday, which he will not get. And I mean, look, if you look at Bolton, he's got the look. He's got this big mustache and his seersucker suits. He's very earnest. He's well-spoken when he speaks. But when you peel aside that Wizard of Oz facade, he's Dr. Strangelove. And all he wanted to do was engage in kinetic warfare. President Donald J. Trump understands that that's 1950s thinking. In this day and age, Eric, it's all about the economic warfare that China wages against us with its tools of economic aggression. It's about the information warfare that countries like China and Russia are now waging against us, trying to shape their narrative in the world rather than our narrative. Things like we created the China virus, not China. Their system is better at controlling the virus than ours. It's crazy stuff, but John Bolton is a willing co-conspirator now because he joined that other side. He's making money with Simon & Schuster, and he's making good bread with Xi and Putin.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Peter Navarro, thank you very much for your time. Officer Destin Legeza with the Brentwood, Tennessee Police Department was killed when a vehicle hit his patrol SUV head-on last week. Officer Legeza was with the department for 5 years and was a third-generation law enforcement officer. He leaves behind his wife. Deputy Sheriff James Blair with the Simpson County Sheriff's Office in Mississippi was shot and killed earlier this month. He was transporting a suspect for an involuntary psychiatric evaluation when he was attacked and the suspect grabbed his gun. Deputy Blair served over 50 years in law enforcement and was raising his grandsons with his wife. Rest in peace, officers, and thank you and your families for your service.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers facts, not falsehoods.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I appreciate the opportunity to clear some of it up.
Hard-edged opinions.
We can no longer rely on China to be the primary producer of so many critical products that we need at a time of crisis.
Tough topic debates.
Has the mainstream media vetted Joe Biden the way they vetted others on the right?
I just believe that all women have the right to speak their truth and that those truths should also be investigated. The end, regardless of what political party they are a part of.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Fighting COVID-19.
We're working with every single state to be able to detect outbreaks before they spread into the community.
And the path forward.
Getting back to some degree of normality, that will come. We will get over this.
America This Week investigates chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
The poisoning of America.
It's in the soils, it's in the water, and it's in our blood.
Toxic chemicals linked to multiple cancers found in towns across America.
We were poisoned, and we are still poisoned.
Almost every day, there is a new community that is finding out that their water is contaminated.
America This Week relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand.
Well, it appears even a pandemic won't slow the president down. Tim Murtaugh, communications director for the Trump 2020 campaign, is with us. Hey, thanks for joining us. A lot going on this week. We had a couple of new MAGA rallies returned. What are your thoughts? What we look back at it over the week now. What came out of this week?
Well, I think actually the president's rally was a fantastic success. We know that despite everything that the media and everybody threw at them, telling them don't go to the Trump rally, we know that 12,000 people came through the magnometers there, and the president in the arena called them all warriors, and so it's great to see the enthusiasm is still there.
Was he mad? Was he upset? I mean, because the reports were that he was upset with the campaign that it wasn't full. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it has to be scary, daunting to go into an arena in the middle of a COVID pandemic going on, and also people being threatened by protesters as well. I mean, but was he upset with the campaign for not filling the arena?
I think the president understands what the situation was and that there was a lot of media coverage, about 8 or 9 days worth, telling people don't go. One, because of the pandemic, and two, the threat of outside forces coming in to cause havoc in the streets of Tulsa. You had the mayor of Tulsa who issued a statement saying that he knew that outside organized groups were coming in. Businesses had their buildings, had their windows boarded up. The place looked like a war zone, a 9-foot steel barrier built around the entire several blocks around the arena, and still 12,000 people came. Yep. And we set a record for viewership on Saturday night for Fox, an all-time biggest audience for Saturday night. And we know that 12 million more watched online, so 20 million Americans watched the president's rally. Joe Biden could never possibly touch a number like that. And we also raised $10 million at the same time. So by those measures, the rally was a fantastic success.
Very good. Let's the other topic I wanted to talk about is the presidential debates. Looks like September for the first one. How many do you think there will be? How many do you want to do? And what is there pushback from the Biden camp?
Well, we had asked for an additional one because we know that Joe Biden's strategy is to stay out of view because every time he goes out in public, it's a disaster. We saw his speech in Philadelphia last weekend, and he didn't take any reporter questions again, 83 days without a press conference. In the middle of the afternoon at a speech in Philadelphia, Joe Biden could barely function, and we know that he's not undergoing the vetting that a candidate for president of the United States should undergo. He just isn't. There's no scrutiny being applied to him. So we want people to see the real difference, the real contrast between President Trump and his vitality and his strong leadership and Joe Biden's confused meandering and his lost trains of thought. I think Americans deserve to see what sort of two people they're considering to run this country for the next 4 years. And so we'd like more debates, and we asked for one additional debate. We didn't think that was too much to ask for, and the Biden campaign flatly rejected it because they're running the campaign from the basement strategy is still in full effect, and that's how they plan to go.
So allow me to ask you this question. At one point, President Trump said he may not go to debates, and they famously didn't go to one of the Fox debates, if I'm not mistaken, in 2016. What if Biden says he's not going to show up for the debates?
Well, I think that then Joe Biden would be depriving the American people of seeing the difference between these two guys. And I think that would be an admission by him and his handlers, who I think are really in charge here, that he's not ready for prime time. How in the world could you argue that you're ready to be president of the United States if you won't even go in front of the American people and debate your opponent? I think the real question in the last cycle, we saw a famous TV ad. Who do you want to answer the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning? Well, I think the real question here is, could Joe Biden answer the phone at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? I think that's a more pertinent question this time.
We're going to leave it right there. Tim Murtaugh with the Trump 2020 campaign. Thank you for your time, Tim.
Thanks,
and for the record, we've reached out to the Biden campaign for months to get someone from their team, anybody, or how about the former vice president himself on this show? We've gotten zero response, but we will keep you informed. So you want to know how you can catch every moment of America This Week or United We Stand? It's very easy. Set that DVR and record us. You can find out when we air in your city by going to facebook.com/America Bolling, all one word. We put a complete list of cities and times at the top of the page.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, American strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands.
America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, points out how rough and tumble politics shape opinion in every region in our country. We tell American stories, stories that touch our people, determine our politics, focus on the future of America.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week. Well, that's it for me from the D.C. Swamp. Thank you for watching, folks. So far, 2020 has felt like the longest year ever. In fact, the last 3 months have felt like 3 decades. That said, this week we saw the day with the most sunlight all year long, and that alone is something to be happy about. Tonight, we leave you with a stunning sunrise from the summer solstice earlier in the week. See you all next week.
Hi,